Welcome to Day 2, Week 8 of the course, Business Skills, a Global Perspective Part 1. Today, let's discuss Shoe Dog, a memoir by Phil Knight. This book is a memoir by the creator of Nike, published in 2016 by Phil Knight. This offers a more than a corporate origin story. It is a reflection on identity, risk, perseverance, and the murky boundary between vision and chaos. While many entrepreneurial memoirs present polished trajectories of success, Knight's account is strikingly honest about fear, failure, debt, and everyday uncertainties of building a business from nothing. This essay will first outline the narrative structure and major events in the memoir. This work will first outline the narrative structure and major events in the memoir, then examine key themes, strengths, and limitations, and finally consider its significance in broader cultural, ethical, and literary contexts. Summary. Phil Knight begins Shoe Dog shortly after obtaining his MBA at Stanford, with a restless sense that a conventional path will not fulfill him. The initial crazy idea, that is, importing inexpensive, high quality running shoes from Japan to the US, sets the stage for a journey fraught with risk, experimentation, and incremental growth. Knight founds Blue Ribbon Sports, partners with Onitsuka, a Japanese shoe firm, and in parallel works with coach or inventor Bill Bowerman, whose experiments with shoe design prove foundational. As years pass, the memoir details repeated setbacks, manufacturing delays, cash flow problems, supplier unreliability, disputes, near bankruptcies, and difficult decisions between scaling up or risking insolvency. Gradually, Knight and his team moved from importing shoes to designing their own, rebranding as Nike, adopting the shoes logo and pushing into new markets. Relationships with employees, suppliers, competitors, and personal life complicate the narrative. Knight shows loyalty, sometimes missteps, sometimes doubts. The memoir culminates in Nike going public around 1980, a milestone but not an endpoint of ambiguity or challenge. Key themes and analysis. Several intertwined themes emerge from Shoe Dog. Below are the most salient ones, considering also what the memoir offers for literacy, ethical, and business scholarship. Entrepreneurship, perseverance, and the crazy idea. The motive of entrepreneurship is not glorified. Its messiness and contingency are exposed. Knight repeatedly confronts situations where he doesn't know what he is doing, yet persists. The crazy idea functions as both promise and burden, a guiding light, but one that demands hardship. This theme is central to the memoir's appeal, its insistence that success is not linear or inevitable, but a product of endurance amid failure. Identity, passion, and authenticity. Knight's identity as a runner, as someone who loves shoes, performance, and experimentation is not incidental. It shapes his decisions, what kind of shoes to sell, how to speak to athletes, how to brand itself is conceived. The authenticity of that identity gives the brand credibility. But identity also constrains. There are instances where Knight must compromise or sacrifice personal comfort to keep sliding forward. This tension gives the narrative emotional depth. Third aspect, leadership, relationships, and team. A recurring insight is that Knight did not build Nike alone. Figures like Bill Bowerman, Jeff Johnson, suppliers, and even those hired on the edge, sometimes before their roles were clear, played essential roles. Loyalty, conflict, mentorship, mistakes in human judgment are all woven into the story. This relational dimension complicates simple founder myth narratives. Fourth aspect, global economy, risk, and adaptation. The early reliance on Japanese manufacturers, the negotiations across cultural boundaries, vulnerability to foreign supply lines, shifting costs, these foreground globalization's opportunities and dangers. Knight's willingness to adapt, to manage relationships abroad, to take risks in foreign markets is crucial. In a broader sense, Shoe Dog exemplifies how business ventures are embedded in international, material, and cultural flows. Fifth aspect, ethical ambiguity and sacrifice. One of the more subtle and perhaps contested parts of the memoir is how Knight deals with ethical dilemmas. In moments where finances are tight or relationships are stressed, decisions are made that raise questions about fairness, honesty, treatment of others, the cost of ambition. The memoir does not always present these in clear moral terms. Sometimes they are admitted mistakes, sometimes compromises. This ambiguity invites reflection rather than moral heroism. Strengths of Shoe Dog: honesty and vulnerability. Knight does not hide his failures, insecurities, or doubts. This renders the memoir more credible and psychologically rich. Rich detail and texture. The operational, financial, design, and logistical details provide something beyond high level gloss. They show the nuts and bolts of building a business. Useful for case studies for understanding entrepreneurship empirically. Narrative drama. Although it is a memoir rather than pure fiction, the pacing, the crisis, the suspense, will he or won't he survive the supplier problem, this financial crisis, give it compelling tension. Cultural or symbolic power. The origin of the swoosh, the choice of name, the branding and marketing efforts, the metaphor of running and race all contribute to how Nike becomes more than just a company. Limitations or criticisms. Selective memory and privilege. Some reviewers note that Knight's background, that is, education, family, support, access to capital or credit, is more privileged than he sometimes implies. The narrative can underplay the structural advantages that facilitated some of Knight's opportunities. Omission of later ethical or social issues. The memoir ends at an early phase of Nike's history. It does not deeply engage with some later critiques of Nike, that is, labor practices, environmental issues that became prominent. For a full history, one must supplement with external sources. Mythologizing risk and sacrifice. While Knight is self-critical, there is still a tendency to treat extreme risk and sacrifice as necessary, even heroic. Some readers may interpret this as valorizing overwork, danger, or ethical compromise. Limited reflection on non-founders. Some employees, factory workers, suppliers are essential to the story, but remain peripheral in Knight's narrative. Their agency, labor conditions, vulnerabilities receive less attention. Significance and implications. Shoe Dog is important not just as business memoir, but as a cultural artifact for several reasons. It challenges popular startup narratives by emphasizing uncertainty, failure, luck, and incremental adaptation rather than polished strategy. It serves as a primary source for scholars interested in branding, innovation, global business in the late 20th century. The way the story situates Nike's rise against larger economic, cultural, and geopolitical shifts is useful. Ethically, the memoir invites exploration of what founders owe to people, how success is negotiated, how stories of success may obscure cost, labor, environment. Literally, Shoe Dog offers material for studying memoir genre. The construction of self, memory, narrative voice, trope of journey, metaphor, running or race, symbolic naming, Nike or swoosh. Conclusion: Phil Knight's Shoe Dog succeeds as more than a stirring tale of corporate triumph. It is a nuanced exploration of what it means to dream big when failure is as plausible as success, of how identity, passion, relationships, and ethical compromises all figure into the making of a global brand. Although it does not resolve every tension, privilege, ethical cost, omission of some voices, it does much to complicate the myth of the always successful entrepreneur. For readers in business, literature, and culture, Shoe Dog is a text to be read both for inspiration and as a lens to interrogate the often untold aspects of what success might cost. Let us now look at the selected quotations and their significance. First quotation: "The cowards never started and the weak died along the way. That leaves us, ladies and gentlemen, us." This is a rallying cry of resilience. It distinguishes those who try from those who don't, and those who endure from those who fall. It helps establish the memoir's sense of community among risk takers and gives meaning to perseverance despite failure. Next quotation: "Let everyone else call your idea crazy. Just keep going. Don't stop. Don't even think about stopping until you get there. And don't give much thought to where there is. Whatever comes, just don't stop." This is a core articulation of Knight's entrepreneurial philosophy. It emphasizes endurance, uncertainty, and forward motion over precise planning. There, the destination is less important than the fact of continuing. Third quotation: "Don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do and let them surprise you with their results." This quote reflects Knight's leadership style. It suggests delegating responsibility and trusting people, allowing for creativity and initiative. It also contrasts with micromanagement, showing how Knight values empowerment. Fourth quotation, you must forget your limits, you must forget your doubts, your pain, your past. This is part of the theme of competition and internal struggle. Not only must external obstacles be confronted, but internal ones, fear, regret, self doubt, must be put aside. It speaks to psychological endurance. Fifth quotation, I would tell men and women in their mid 20s not to settle for a job or a profession or even a career. Seek a calling, even if you don't know what that means, seek it. If you are following your calling, the fatigue will be easier to bear, the disappointments will be fuel, the highs will be like nothing you have ever felt. This speaks to vocation versus mere occupation. Knight is arguing that if one follows something deeply meaningful, a calling, hardships won't feel senseless. They become part of the journey, and rewards, though unpredictable, carry deeper satisfaction. Sixth quotation, have faith in yourself, but also have faith in faith. Not faith as others define it, faith as you define it, faith as faith defines itself in your heart. This quote shows how Knight frames inner belief. It is not rigid ideology, but a personal evolving trust in one's capacity and in one's journey. It's less about external validation and more about internal anchoring. Seventh quote, it's never just business. It never will be. If it ever does become just business, that will mean that business is very bad. Here, Knight resists the notion that business can be purely transactional and devoid of meaning. For him, Nike was about identity, values, relationships, not just profits or markets. Eighth quotation, fear of failure, I thought. Eighth quotation, fear of failure, I thought, will never be our downfall as a company. This addresses how the project of founding Nike involved anticipating frequent failure, not avoiding it. What mattered was how quickly failure was acknowledged, how lessons were drawn, and how forward motion was resumed. Shoe Dog has been widely praised for its candidness, storytelling, and as a counter narrative to polished entrepreneurial mythologies. Some criticism arises around its omissions, selective perspective, and the degree to which inspiration devolves into heroic myth. The reviews span mainstream voices, for example, Bill Gates, Kirkus, specialist business or ethics commentators, and personal or reader blogs. Major positive reviews and their arguments. Bill Gates describes Shoe Dog as a refreshingly honest reminder of what the path to business success really looks like. He values that the memoir shows the mess, the chaos, frequent setbacks, not a linear success. In his view, Knight opens up in a way few CEOs do. This speaks to how Shoe Dog challenges the standard hero entrepreneur narrative. Alison Jones praises the book as a masterclass in business writing, finding its narrative compelling, vivid, with inner life reminiscent of novels. She emphasizes how Knight's revelations about his doubts, fears, moments of near failure make the story more real, more human. She also accentuates how brand storytelling becomes emotionally powerful. Third aspect, solopreneur grin or Josh Cano. This reviewer finds the memoir especially valuable for its gritty, detailed account of what starting and building a business is like, not romantic but grounded. He notes that the personal perspective, the failures, debts, unpredictable challenges, and also the leaps of faith are what make it useful for entrepreneurs. Fourth, Kirkus reviews. Kirkus gives a generally favorable review describing Shoe Dog as apt. It emphasizes how the book treats the dog's struggle, inherent in distributorship, manufacturing, legal wrangles, etc. It acknowledges that readers familiar with Nike may already know some parts, but still finds value in the raw, detailed retelling. Critical or mixed reviews and points of tension. The Success and Deceit of Nike, a critique of Shoe Dog, Nicole Summerfield. This review comments Knight's storytelling and inspirational aspects, but raises significant critical questions. Privilege is under-acknowledged. Example, family resources, early support. The role of deceit, whether of business partners or in how success is narrated, is suggested to be more present than most mainstream reviews allow. Summerfield argues the American dream narrative glosses over structural advantages. Second review, Business is the Best Medicine by Neil Slater, MBA MD. This review appreciates the storytelling and inspiration, but is more skeptical about the book's usefulness as a business manual. Key criticisms, lack of detailed, actionable advice. The review notes that while there is much about grit, risk, and vision, there are few concrete tools or frameworks one can directly apply. Culture description. Slater feels that Nike's culture is often invoked, that is, winning, persistence, but not deeply unpacked. How culture was operationalized, how decisions reflected culture, How it shaped or harmed people internally is less clear. Litcrit Pop. This reviewer reflects on how the book engages emotionally on metaphors, particularly running, and on how Knight's personal uncertainties are revealed. However, also notes that some of the motivational rhetoric, running is equal to business is equal to life, can become repetitive. In some places, the narrative feels more like inspiration than critical self analysis. Fourth review, Kirkus in part negative. While generally positive, Kirkus criticizes certain structural features. The book's pacing lags at times. Some passages feel like they conform too much to business memoir tropes like slides, checklists, business speak, rather than revelatory storytelling. Key critical themes and scholarly reflections. From these reviews, several critical themes emerge which are important for academic work. Firstly, authenticity versus myth making. Shoe Dog is often praised for being more authentic than many business memoirs, but critics ask how much of that authenticity is selective, what is included versus excluded, how much hardship is emphasized versus glossed, how the successes are narrated with luck, but the role of systemic privilege is downplayed. One might ask whether the memoir destabilizes the entrepreneurial myth or simply refashions it in more humble terms. Narrative scope and limits. The focus is on the early years up to IPO. Ethical issues later in Nike's history, labor, environmental concerns, global supply chain scrutiny, receive little treatment. Also, the internal cultural issues within Nike beyond the founder's viewpoint, for example, worker experience, diversity, are not deeply explored. Critics note that this limits the book's candidness in terms of full corporate responsibility. Third review, useful for inspiration, less so for business strategy. Many reviews point out that the Shoe Dog is strong in inspiring resilience, in telling the entrepreneurial journey with tension, but relatively weaker when it comes to offering generalizable frameworks or tactical guidance. For people looking for case studies, metrics, strategic blueprints, the book offers pieces but not a full manual. Fourth review, style, structure, emotion. Reviewers consistently praise Knight's narrative style, vivid, dramatic, emotionally engaging. The use of metaphor, that is running, race, endurance, is noted as a strength, binding personal identity to business. But some critics find that this metaphor heavy style may lead to rhetorical repetition. Also, some sections are described as listless or business speech like Perkirkus, suggesting that parts of the book slip into conventional memoir or business language. Fifth review, role of chance, privilege, support. Many reviews both praise the book for acknowledging risk, luck, and uncertainty, but also urge greater acknowledgement of how Knight's background, family, and context aided him. These reviews suggest that perseverance, while essential, is not the full explanation of Nike's success. What these reviews imply for scholars. A few inferences and avenues are useful for researchers. Shoe Dog can be seen as a productive text for studying narrative identity, risk, ambition. It complicates but does not overturn the entrepreneurial myth. Its omissions, that is, ethical, social, labor issues, are themselves revealing what corporate memoirs tend to leave out and how that shapes public understanding of capitalist success. For literature, it offers rich metaphor, emotional texture, tension, but partly constrained by genre conventions of business memoir. For business ethics and history, it offers a primary source up to Nike's early public years, but requires supplementation for a full picture of Nike's corporate evolution in later decades.